Well, much of the polarization in U.S. politics today really began almost a decade ago in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Covert Russian influence deeply affected that election, undermining many voters' confidence that their votes, their elections, were safe from foreign meddling. In the years since, U.S. authorities claim they have learned lessons and are better equipped to deal with the threat. But they also warn that Russia has not backed off, and other countries are also trying their hand at bending the will of U.S. voters.
When right-wing commentator Tim Pool announced just over a week ago to his 2 million followers that he was stepping back from his successful YouTube show, he said it was for personal reasons.
So with that being said, it's kind of the weirdest way to announce that I'm pursuing, my family life to the best of my abilities.
But many speculated that the real reason had something to do with the recent Department of Justice investigation, claiming that he was being paid by Russia to spread pro-Trump disinformation. The indictment alleges that Russia funneled $10 million to 3 political commentators, one of them assumed to be Pool, laundered through a U.S.-based shell company without disclosing to them that the funding was foreign. Authorities say it's part of Moscow's effort to influence the 2024 election, which they say has become more sophisticated since its first major efforts in 2016, although efforts to counter interference have also improved.
In 2024, in my opinion, we have a good reason to be a bit more optimistic, so to speak, that the threat has been smaller than in 2016. And the key reason is because that basically better performance on the side of American intelligence agencies, as well as better responsibility from relevant media organs.
Still, it proves to be a game of cat and mouse. While the Department of Justice managed to shut down the phony company funneling Moscow's money to Tim Pool, Russia continues to generate a flood of posts from fake accounts on social media platforms such as X, Instagram, and TikTok aimed at U.S. voters. The U.S. intelligence community also says 2 other foreign powers are targeting U.S.'s upcoming election, Iran and China. Iran appears to be focusing its efforts at preventing Trump from taking office, targeting particular groups through fake websites such as Afro Majority aimed at black voters and Not Our War aimed at veterans. China, according to U.S. intelligence, does not appear to have a preference in the presidential election, but is focusing efforts on unseating down-ballot politicians with anti-China views. Investigators exposed a Chinese-linked online campaign against Marsha Blackburn, a Republican congresswoman whose aggressive anti-China stance has garnered national attention.
We're going to have to break a lot more of China to save America.
Beijing has insisted that it does not intend to and will not interfere in the U.S. election. While U.S. national security officials have prepared for the threat of foreign meddling, they haven't ruled out new methods that may only come to light after the votes are cast.
Well, to dig a little deeper into this, I'm joined by Mona Charen. She's the host of the popular podcast Beg to Differ. Mona, it's good to have you with us. I dare say that most Americans have heard about Russia's past efforts to interfere in U.S. elections, but the threat from China has not been on the radar of a lot of voters. Is China interested in swaying and the outcomes of U.S. elections the same way that Russia has been and still is?
So you're absolutely right that this has gotten comparatively little attention this year. I guess Americans are so focused on our own internal divisions that we've taken our eyes off external influences and those who are seeking to interfere. But yes, China is interfering in the election or attempting to, as Russia is. But it's unclear how effective that will be. Even in 2016, the year that Russia's efforts were the most flamboyant, it's hard to say that it had a measurable impact on actual voters. Very hard to measure.
Everyone is expecting the election this time around to be very close. And if that is the case, I mean, if the poll numbers are reliable, theoretically, then it wouldn't take much to sway a relatively small number of voters and then sway the entire outcome of the vote, would it?
It's a fair point. And look, I mean, if you look at the broad sweep of civilizations, whenever one country has been successful in intervening in the affairs of another, it's almost always because of internal divisions in the first country. So when Pizarro landed in South America, you know, the Incas were already at war with one another, and that's why he was so able to conquer. It's a very old story, and it's something that we Americans don't pay enough attention to. We tend to be so insular. We're surrounded by oceans, and we think we're invulnerable. But of course, our internal divisions are a source of weakness and something that other nations will seek to exploit. And of course, you're right. With the election being so close, any small variation in the number of votes one way or the other could be decisive.
Yeah. You know, the polarization of politics in Washington means that the U.S. Senate, for example, takes too much time to approve ambassador appointments. With that in mind, I want you to take a listen to what U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told members of Congress about what is or perhaps is not happening. Take a listen.
The system is broken. It's damaging our diplomacy. It's undermining our competitiveness. It's disincentivizing public service. And of course, this all feeds our competitors' false narratives of our decline and division.
He was speaking to the Foreign Service there, not Congress, but the issue remains trust and a lack thereof in the system. That's what he's talking about. What does a foreign country such as China, what do they get from that lack of trust in the system?
Yes, the goal of autocracies is to convince people in their own societies that democracies don't work better than autocracies, that the democracies of the world are fatally flawed, cannot get anything done, are riven by disputes internally, don't really have significant freedoms that are in excess of what people get in autocracies. And so that is their goal, to discredit the democratic world. And unfortunately, when we are tied up in knots fighting one another, it does play into that narrative for them that we are dysfunctional. Of course, it isn't true. Even with all of our problems, people around the world still struggle to come to the free and democratic world and try to leave countries like China and Russia.
But you know, perception does matter. And I think, particularly inside the United States, there is this perception that we've dropped the ball when it comes to projecting this power. How confident are you that U.S. authorities are doing a good enough job when it comes to uncovering and preventing foreign interference, and of course, most importantly, that they are preventing foreign meddling in elections?
Well, I'm afraid that very much depends upon who is elected on Tuesday, or however long it takes to determine the outcome. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has welcomed foreign interference in our elections as long as it benefited him. And so that, you know, I would not expect that to change. There are Trump supporters who have who've worn T-shirts saying that they would prefer Putin to Biden. That was last time around. That it very much depends, I would say. If Kamala Harris is elected, I think you will see a lot more of the kind of traditional concern about foreign interference. And if Trump is elected, then less.
Mona, I've got 15 seconds. Do you dare to make a prediction of who's going to win on Tuesday?
Oh, why not? I'll go out on a limb and say that I do think Harris will win by a hair just because of the strength of the female vote this time around.
Finally, someone willing to take a stand. Yeah, we'll take that one. Mona, chair and host of the podcast Beg to Differ. Mona, we appreciate you being on the show, and we'll be in touch. Maybe we can talk next week after Election Day. We'll see what happens. Thank you.